Hi everyone, Nemo here. This time I'm fact-checking the Saints Unscripted video around Joseph Smith's relationship to 14-year-old Helen Mar Kimball. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and stick around to the end because I've got some really exciting news. With that said, let's get to it.
Hey guys, so despite the fact that members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints stopped practicing plural marriage over 100 years ago, the fact that it was once a thing is still understandably hard for people to digest, myself included. As I mentioned in the last episode we did about polygamy, I don't like this subject. I'd bet most Latter-day Saints today don't like it. That said, it's part of our history, so we've got to own it.
Owning it means being honest about what really happened and not trying to spin things. Since that's the stated aim of this video, let's see how well it does.
While I still have lots of questions about plural marriage, there are also lots of rumors and misconceptions about the practice that we can address.
Misconceptions and rumors is acting as cognitive preloading here. It's already setting up the listener to view the impending narrative in that way as untrustworthy and as rumors and speculation.
One subject of considerable controversy is Joseph Smith's plural marriage to 14-year-old Helen Mar Kimball. So that is what we're going to talk about in this episode. Alright guys, so here's where the rubber meets the road. People are uncomfortable with the fact that Joseph Smith married a 14-year-old, mainly because marriage usually implies a sexual relationship, and Joseph Smith having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old sounds super inappropriate.
It sounds more than just super inappropriate. It sounds like a 37-year-old man having sex with a 14-year-old child. And before you cry presentism, I'll make the point that yes, marriage at an earlier age was common in that time period, but a 23-year age gap was not. Young people would marry other young people. Also, saying marriage usually involves a sexual relationship and implying this one didn't is to disregard the environment and heavenly mandate under which plural marriage, polygamy, took place. D&C 132 gives the reasoning for polygamous marriages as being to multiply and replenish the earth and bear the souls of men. In harmony with this commandment, any plural wives Joseph took should have entered into a sexual relationship with him. So if he married Helen Mar Kimball polygamously, then under the rules of polygamy, as set out by God, he should have been having children with her. If not, he would not be obeying the commandments fully. And polygamy was a serious business. When Joseph was reluctant to practice it, God sent an angel with a drawn sword to persuade him otherwise. From the church's essay on plural marriage, when God commands a difficult task, he sometimes sends additional messages to encourage his people to obey. Consistent with this pattern, Joseph told associates that an angel appeared to him 3 times between 1834 and 1842. And commanded him to proceed with plural marriage when he hesitated to move forward. During the 3rd and final appearance, the angel came with a drawn sword, threatening Joseph with destruction unless he went forward and obeyed the commandment fully.
So, for the record, while there's not enough evidence to prove anything, what we do know suggests that the relationship between Joseph and Helen was very likely not sexual.
Okay, so we're just ignoring the divine mandate that he should have been following then. That he should have been trying to have children with her because God told him to, and God cared so much about Joseph obeying this commandment that he sent an angel with a drawn sword to convince him to do it. We're ignoring all that.
Helen was sealed to Joseph about 13 months before Joseph was killed. During that time, Helen continued to live at home with her parents. Brian Hales, who we've had on the show, said Helen wrote more about plural marriage than any other female author in the 19th century, defending it and Joseph Smith. Through those pages, Helen never describes even one time being alone with the prophet without a chaperone.
This is an argument from silence. It is implying that because something wasn't recorded, therefore it didn't happen, which is fallacious thinking. And just because she lived with her parents doesn't mean they weren't having a sexual relationship. Polygamy at this time was being kept a secret, at least to the outside world. In a signed public affidavit dated 1st of October 1842, Joseph had 31 witnesses signed to say that polygamy was not being practiced in the church. Specifically, we know of no other rule or system of marriage than the one published from the Book of Doctrine and Covenants. The 1835 Doctrine and Covenants referred to here contains a declaration of monogamy as the rule for marriage within the church. But Joseph had already been practicing polygamy for 7 years before this, according to Family Search. His first plural wife was Fanny Alger in 1835. Joseph himself denied being a polygamist in May 1844, 9 years after taking his first plural wife, and many plural wives later. He said, "What a thing it is for a man to be accused of committing adultery and having 7 wives, when I can only find 1. Given this environment of lying and secrecy, it's no wonder his 14-year-old bride didn't move in with him."
Helen herself defended Joseph's motives, saying if Joseph had had any impure desires, he could have gratified them in the style of the world with less danger of his life or his character than to do as he did. And for more information suggesting that their relationship was likely not sexual, check out the notes in the YouTube description of this video. It's also important to recognize that Joseph was not courting Helen. In fact, marrying Helen was not even Joseph's idea. It was her father's idea, Heber C. Kimball. He taught me the principle of celestial marriage, and having a great desire to be connected with the prophet Joseph, he offered me to him. My father introduced to me this principle and asked me if I would be sealed to Joseph, who came next morning, and with my parents, I heard him teach and explain the principle of celestial marriage. And forming an eternal family connection really was the purpose of this marriage.
It's funny you say that, as it's not one of the stated aims of polygamy as found in scripture. Also, the argument that it wasn't Joseph's idea is very weak. All it does is shift the blame to another adult who put a child in a situation where they were marrying someone 23 years older.
Helen's son, Orson Whitney, described Helen's marriage to Joseph as a golden link whereby the houses of Heber and Joseph were indissolubly and forever joined. Some of Joseph's plural marriages were for time or mortal life only, some were for time and eternity, and some were for eternity only. Helen's marriage was probably meant for time and eternity, but due to her young age, it seems that for all intents and purposes, the marriage was largely treated as an eternity-only marriage, similar to some of his marriages to women on the opposite end of the age spectrum, like 56-year-old Fanny Young or 58-year-old Rhoda Richards.
This old argument. Joseph married older women too. So, why does that mean he wouldn't be having sex with them as well? This video admits Helen's marriage to Joseph was intended to be for time and eternity, and then tries to tell us without any evidence that this is probably only treated as an eternal marriage.
Now, clearly Helen's father wanted the best for Helen and believed that this was it, but that understandably didn't make it easy for Helen. And in her writing, she talks about how she thought herself a much abused child because after her marriage to Joseph, she wasn't allowed to be as socially involved as her peers, suggesting that she may not have fully understood the social implications of the marriage at the time. And later in life, Helen did acknowledge that at the time she was too young or too foolish to comprehend and appreciate all that she heard Joseph Smith teach.
If she did not understand the social implications at the time, then there were social implications to her marriage to Joseph. She was being treated like a married woman socially at the age of 14. But then this video says her marriage was purely eternal and about the next life. If that is the case, then why was she being treated like a temporarily married woman? Also, her later admittance to being too young to understand is pretty significant. She's essentially letting us know that she didn't give, or wasn't able to give, informed consent, because she was too young and foolish to fully understand and therefore be fully informed.
Latter-day Saints consider eternal marriage to be an ordinance necessary for exaltation, assuming the parties involved stay true to the covenants they make. But there is some controversy surrounding Helen's understanding of what her sealing to Joseph meant for her in the eternities. She remembers Joseph saying at the time, "If you will take this step, it will ensure your eternal salvation and exaltation, and that of your father's household and all of your kindred. This promise was so great that I willingly gave myself to purchase so glorious a reward." Now, obviously, Helen was under some pressure from her father to accept the marriage, and Joseph's status as the prophet surely added pressure. But some people point to this quote as evidence that Joseph coerced Helen into the marriage with the promise of unconditional exaltation. I find that conclusion unlikely, because on the very next page of Helen's recollection, she references the promises Joseph made to her and says that, "With the help of our Heavenly Father, I am determined to so live that I can claim those promises," suggesting that she was aware that those promises were not without conditions. Also, Helen's parents were present when Joseph made these promises. Helen was sealed to Joseph in May 1843, and we have a June letter from her mother and a July letter from her father that pretty clearly show that they also did not consider anyone's exaltation to be guaranteed through marriage. But you're certainly free to come to your own conclusions.
His argument is that Joseph didn't coerce her with the promise of unconditional salvation because Helen knew there were conditions. What? That doesn't mean there wasn't coercion, particularly because in the quote of what Joseph said to her, there is no mention for the promised blessings being unconditional. This is such a straw man. The presenter is saying that Joseph didn't coerce Helen with unconditional promises, as some people claim, because Helen knew the promises were conditional. But that doesn't mean there wasn't coercion with conditional blessings. And one of those conditions? Marrying Joseph in the first place. Let's lay this out. 14-year-old girl is promised eternal salvation and exaltation for her and her family if she marries Joseph Smith. Her parents are present for this and allow their daughter to give herself to the prophet in exchange for these promises. So rather than meaning the prophet didn't coerce her, it simply shows her parents were complicit. This is further reinforced by the video, which states there was pressure from her father. So it's not that Joseph didn't coerce her, it's just that her father did too.
My personal conclusion is that while this marriage was understandably hard for Helen, it wasn't the product of Joseph Smith being creepy, but was rather a way for the Kimball family and the Smith family to be connected after this life. After Joseph died, Helen was remarried to Horace Whitney, who also later practiced polygamy. While it was oftentimes a heart-wrenching practice, she defended it. She wrote, "I did not try to conceal the fact of plural marriage having been a trial, but confessed that it had been one of the severest of my life, but that it had also proven one of the greatest of blessings." She died as a believing member of the faith in 1896. Check out the resources in the YouTube description for more info on this topic, and have a great day.
There's a running theme that because Helen defended polygamy in later life, therefore it wasn't wrong that she was a polygamous bride at the age of 14. I don't see the connection. Just because someone defends something bad that happened to them doesn't stop it being a bad thing. The presenter of this video is right about one thing at least. Polygamy is very uncomfortable. Not only because of the fact that Joseph took multiple teen brides, or that Emma was threatened with destruction in D&C 132 if she were to deny Joseph his polygamous wives. No, the worst part for me at least, is that of all the things God could have sent an angel with a drawn sword to get involved with, it was to make sure Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. Now for that announcement. Make sure to tune in on Wednesday, when I will be joined by my first ever guest, as Peter Bleakley and I team up to tackle the idea that you can't be in loyal opposition to the church. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, check out his videos in the description below, and drop this video a like. Bye now.